in today's market, if you see the role, you're not going to get into the front door. So it's always like, how do you use the back door? How do you use relationships?
We definitely had technical advisors that gave them technical interviews, code reviews, stuff like that. I still talk to every single person that we hire.
So many CEOs I talk to, they hire a marketer and they don't think through what is the flavor of the marketer that I need their superpower to be. Do you have a favorite interview question?
I do love to pepper in some consulting questions, just to see how they think, what motivates them.
Any wisdom where you've kind of like learned is throughout the arc of your career?
I think the biggest thing is like the period of time that you have this person is probably going to be longer than the period of time that, you have a gap in a role that you need to fill.
Welcome to How I Hire. Today, I'm joined by Evan Huck. Evan's a friend from GTM Fund and just startups in general, former sales leader. He saw the pain of customer testimonials and he founded UserEvidence to solve this problem for companies. Evan, welcome. Great to have you.
How's it going, Andy? Good to hang out.
It's great to hang out too, man. I know you work with so many go-to-market companies and really excited to talk about kind of how you find talent, evaluate talent, make talent successful. I think you've seen it as an AE, you've seen it as a CEO, and you've seen that whole transition. So
it's only the most critical thing you can do in a company is hire the right talent. So
I say there's only like 2 or 3 jobs for a CEO, right? There's hiring talent, pruning talent, raising money, and inspiring people with a great strategy. So hopefully you're good at all 3.
Yeah, it's easy.
That's terrific. Well, maybe let's start off just kind of in the, how do you say you're designing a new executive role? Like, how do you think about that? How do you structure that? Like, be curious, like what works, what doesn't there?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like a good example is actually the first time we hired, our first executive hire was a VP of marketing. Some of them are like more well known. Actually, our first one was VP customer success. Like that one, I knew exactly like that role is relatively straightforward. So it was easier to define and scope what they do. We had been doing it, my co-founder Ray and I. So it's essentially, taking parts of the job that we're already doing, up-leveling it, eventually having them hire new people. So that was relatively straightforward. The one that was tricky was our VP of marketing. I had never done marketing. My whole last company never had marketing. So I'd had like very low exposure to it. And there's a lot of ways that you could go on that hire. You could have someone who's strong in product marketing and weaker in demand gen or specialist versus generalist. I think we talked to a lot of marketers that as we talked to them and just interviewed them, like we kind of had a wide aperture to start. And then as we talked to them and figured out what they're good at, we then mapped that to, I think like the problems that we believed that we had and the big initiatives that we believed we need to tackle, which helped us further hone the scope of what we need, which within the marketing case ended up being like probably 50% product marketing to start, like 30% brand, and then like 20% like demand gen as our first hire. And then of course, that VP of marketing ended up hiring, a product marketing person, a demand gen person, and a content person, over time. But I think like for those jobs that have a lot of sub jobs in them, you're trying to figure out the right kind of portfolio balance or pie of expertise and mapping that to your challenges and your big initiatives is the kind of methodology there.
I love that. So many CEOs I talk to, they hire a marketer and they don't think through what is the flavor of the marketer that I need their superpower to be. So it's awesome that you did that. It's amazing how many people I give basically that exact same thing. It's like demand gen, brand, or product marketing. Like, where do you need? And they're like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. I've seen some CMOs churn out recently because they haven't. Given that you hadn't hired it before, how did you research that? Did you call recruiting firms? Did you call your investors? Like, how did you get smart on like what you needed?
Yeah, we definitely leveraged our network to find other, marketing leaders and even other just early stage CEOs that were maybe a little bit ahead of us that had a similar business pattern, which for us was like, mid-market to enterprise offering, selling into marketing, heavily outbound at the time oriented organization. And so we talked to other leaders that had that and asked them, what were the profiles of people that you hired? And that helped us, scope the initial spec. But honestly, it was just like probably the first 3 or 4 interviews where we really started to learn about the differences in skill sets. And then once we heard people give examples of how they'd applied these skill sets, it was easier to be like, all right, that's cool. We don't need that here. Not applicable. But like, ooh, yeah, that's cool. And that's like solved a big problem for us. And it's a contrast to skill set that we don't have, which I think is meaningful in an early stage company. It's like, you want diversity of skill sets so you can kind of cover more ground.
Yeah. Did you, one thing I've done in the past when I've been CEO and I'm hiring roles that I've never done before, like head of CTO or something like that, is I go out and like get somebody to put them on the interview panel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, for sure. So yeah, we did have like a marketer that we trusted on the interview panel, especially for the tech. I mean, my background is sales. We definitely had technical advisors that gave them technical interviews, code reviews, stuff like that, because we would have had no idea what we're doing. Just showing up and like, oh, this is a cool person that we would like to hang out with. Like, can work okay in sales, but not a great methodology for engineering talent.
No, that's great. So now you've got the role and you're going to go out there. Like, do you post it? Do you work your network? Do you hire recruiters? Do you call your VC talent teams? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, it depends on the role. Like for the engineering ones, like the first engineer we hired, our network was, we obviously put it out to the network and post on LinkedIn and, had our investors start to, send it around. But I don't think we had great confidence that our network was super threaded and deep in technical talent. And so for that one, it made sense to, like, right from the get-go, like we had an engineering recruiter that was also working with us. And ideally, those are contingent, if it's, a first engineer, for instance. For leadership, oftentimes you have to do a retained search, of course. And we did do that for our VP of sales. Mm-hmm. But so some of them that are recruiters, for the VP of marketing, it was actually through GTM Fund that we got introduced to that person. Same with our VP of success, actually. So combination network, investors, you want to do all of the above, but I think if you have low confidence in your network, at least having a contingent recruiter, and we use contingent recruiters even when we're strong, because they're contingent. They're nothing to lose. In other words, you don't pay them unless you actually hire from them.
Yep.
And for the ones that are really critical and like really tough, like VP of sales was a good example. Like we missed on our first VP of sales from our network. And,
you mean not a good hire or something?
Yeah, not a good, let them go after 6 months. And so we're like, all right, we can't get this. We can't afford another miss on this one. We have to get it right. And so like paying whatever 60, 80K or something like that for retained. Yeah, let's do it.
That's awesome. We'll dive into the how do you know when you get it right, or how do you get it right later on. That's fun. The one thing you didn't touch on is like your VC talent teams. Like, do you? It depends upon, like, if you're earlier stage, sometimes they're stronger in some of those roles or not. But if you found those to be helpful, and if any of your VC talent teams that you found work well?
Yeah, definitely. And some of them are good at different types of roles. Like one of our seed investors, and this is part of the reason we chose them. Ray and I, my co-founder, come from sales backgrounds. So, obviously a good experience there, very little product and industry experience. And so A4 was one of our first seed investors, where the two guys were like, early product managers at Google and something else, and deep networks in those spaces, and also we also pulled them in to be interviewers on the panel. And so that network was, very useful for that role. And then, go-to-market fund, for instance, obviously helped us find VP of marketing and VP of customer success, because that's where they're strong. But definitely. And that's one of the areas that's easiest probably for investors to help.
Yeah.
So absolutely leverage them. But having, slightly different investors that are good in different types of roles, like, I think was an advantage as well.
That totally makes sense. Yeah, you and I met through Go-to-Market Fund. They're a great network in so many ways.
Yeah, 100%.
Big shout out to them. Let's talk about, like, okay, so say you got the role, you got it out there, you got to post it. Like, how does talent find you, right? Like, especially in this market when it's so hard. Like, what can people do to break through to get to Evan? Or is it more, are you locked down, or how do you think about
That's a good question. Like, it depends on the role as well. Like, engineering, honestly, like our last 2 or 3 engineers, like we just posted a job posting on Workable, which then syndicates it out to a bunch of job boards. And we got like 500 candidates. And I think Grant, our head of engineering, probably just built his own AI bot to just like kind of cruise through the resumes and like pick out the top 100. And then he reaches out to them, has to do a little code challenge or whatever. Mark, when he hires his marketers, like he's got a huge network on LinkedIn, so he gets a ton of demand. And so he's pretty rigid about, like, you have to go through the application process, because he's got a bunch of like big, long essay questions, which are, important for judging your writing skill as a marketer. But for sales, it's an interesting one, right? Like, all right, I want to see you actually not go through the process, and I want to see you multi-thread. And so like I kind of expect like some creative outreach, multi-threaded, multi-channel, pinging multiple people in the company. If it's Amanda's hire, Amanda's our SDR manager, you should probably be pinging me and Heather, our VP of sales, with like, hey, I reached out to Amanda and I'm excited about the role because of this, and this, excited to hopefully meet you one day. Like that demonstrates the skill set that you need to have in sales, where you need to have this creative, social oriented outreach. And so I do want to see that pattern in a salesperson for sure.
Dude, I love that. Yeah. I had never thought about it as nuanced. I'm always like, in today's market, if you see the role, you're not going to get into the front door. So it's always like, how do you use the back door? How do you use relationships? But it varies role by role, right? Like your head of
I think it's all, I would always like, just because I'm a salesperson, like, if I was an engineer or even from architectural, like I would certainly do the application, but it doesn't hurt to go direct, to the hiring manager if you can, just because like, it helps you stand out amongst the stack of resumes. One of my favorite jokes someone once told me is like about hiring is like, yeah, I'd like to print out all the resumes and put them on my desk, and then I take half of them and I throw them in the trash because I don't like to work with people that are unlucky, which I thought was kind of funny. But my point is like, don't depend on, getting through the resume stack through the front door for sure.
I deeply agree with that. Well, how do you think, so say a role's reporting to you, like, so if you're hiring Mark or you're hiring your head of sales, where in that process are you meeting people? Is it like, are you doing first screen? Are you letting other people do it? How do you when do you engage candidates as the hiring manager?
I mean, if it's my hire, if it's leadership, yeah, I'm probably the first conversation. I mean, if there's an exec search firm, obviously they do some screenings and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty like, if it's like an SDR, I still talk to, we have 40 people, by the way.
Yeah.
I still talk to every single person that we hire. Like there's, that probably goes through 100, honestly. Again, there's no more important use of my time than like making sure we have the best and right people on my team. So I'm pretty down to like spend some time on hiring and really like, again, that's a good area to invest. There's plenty of ways to make your process more efficient, of course. And you do like sales, you want to get to a nice funnel. If you're doing 100 screens and then only 4 next calls, like something's off, right? So yeah, optimize the funnel, but like I over-index on executive spending time with people. I think that's super important.
When do you think, so that talk to everybody is interesting. Like I've listened to a lot, like many 1,000-person plus companies I have, the CEO still is the raising the bar. I'm still going to look at the packet. I may not talk to them. And maybe CEO, you can probably go to a couple hundred, because we all know UserEvidence is going to grow that fast. But you can grow to a couple hundred where you're still interviewing like director level plus type people. But where do you start at what stage do you think you won't be able to interview everyone, like the junior support person or the SDR and stuff like that? Or how do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that will come, but then the same concept still applies in the kind of geometric sense. It's like, all right, if it's an SDR, then the VP of sales should be spending time with that person, right? Two roles, 2 levels away, right? That skip level interview is, I think, pretty critical. So yeah, there will come a time where I won't be able to do everyone, but then at least our VP suite should have range until we get to 300 or something like that. But yeah, I think it's just like, it's critical from an assessment perspective. It's also critical for a candidate experience and recruiting perspective. If that candidate's got 2 offers, put me in, coach. Like I can sell, right? If the other company doesn't put their CEO on, like we probably win that one, right? So it's like, especially if it's competitive, like, having a good executive presence and putting some of your best, smartest people forward, I think is really smart. We also think about that just from a diverse interview panel across functions as well, especially in functions like marketing or product where there's an inherent cross functionality to it. The panel is not always vertical. It's like it includes people from multiple functions. And if it's a competitive scenario, it includes some of the sharpest people that I know show up incredibly well in an interview and can sell too, because we want to win that candidate, right?
I love it. You kind of touched on it, which is kind of a little bit of a parallel with what your business does too, right? But the employer brand, right? Like, and how people think about it as an employer. Do you think about that? Because it's like, how do you close the best candidates, especially because you're in Wyoming, I think it is? Or no?
Yeah.
Did I get this right? Yeah. So you're unique, but you probably have the remote thing going for you. But
yeah, for sure.
how do you differentiate user evidence from other folks? How do you make it seem like a really attractive employer? And what do you think about there on that side?
I mean, the nice part is like the same work we do from a thought leadership, a content, humanization, cool factor, whatever, for marketing also applies to, employee marketing, right? And it's the same channel, right? For us, it's like, well, oftentimes LinkedIn. And candidates we just had a post today. We did a series that Mark, our VP of marketing, has been leading, where he interviews these people in these cool locations. The last one with Dave Gerhardt, where they played golf together. And the one that just went out today was me and Mark in Jackson Hole skiing, just talking about my background and stuff like that. And I think that, that is a channel and a medium through which you're able to kind of display your company culture and who you are as a human and what your values are. And it's good for brand and lead acquisition and all that, but it's equally important for employee marketing and candidate acquisition, and displaying this kind of unique, interesting, human, balanced culture that we have.
Do you or anybody use your platform for like powering the careers page as well too, or is that something people haven't gone there yet?
We've thought about it. We've been asked about it a few times, and I think it's interesting. But no, we have not gotten there yet. Mainly for the purpose of just like, when people see user evidence, we want them to think, these are all verified customers, and not kind of dilute the kind of analogous to a G2, right? Like a very clear picture of who the audience is. But I do think that's interesting.
I think you're right. It's probably a smaller corner use case, and you can build it yourself, and you don't.
But it's like the same concept of like us versus G2. User evidence is this proactive platform to go develop content proactively rather than a review site where everyone came. Glassdoor is essentially the G2 of the employee world, right? But you could have an analogous more platform that goes and creates content for employees. I do think that'd be a cool company. Yeah, no, that could be a cool company.
Well, how do you when you interview folks, like, do you have a favorite interview question?
It depends on the role. Again, one of my favorite ones is just like, I do love to pepper in some consulting questions, just to see how they think, even if it's like, has nothing to do with their role. It's like, all right, how many gumballs would fit in this 45-foot bus? Just to like see them break down the thought process, lay out their assumptions. So my interviews are always a little bit funny like that. Like, and it's kind of a nice change of pace from like a role specific interview, because it's just like, it's fun, it's different. And I want to see, like, my main focus is, especially if it's, an SDR or something, 2 levels role where someone else has probably already done the diligence around what their experience is and their attainment and all that, is like, how do they think? Just like, what's their raw, especially in a startup, like just raw aptitude and, just IQ, EQ, what motivates them. Like, startups are hard. Obviously, like, we want this person to be around for 3+ years, that there's going to be challenges. Are they correctly intrinsically motivated? Are they really oriented towards like humility and learning and curiosity, which I think is a big thing. I mean, a lot of the people who hire, especially in sales, are like, it's their first job out of college, right? So it's really all potential that we're gauging, which is really a function of like raw IQ times your rate of learning, which is a function of humility, curiosity, tolerance for experimenting and embracing failure. And then there's, most importantly, it's just like, does this person seem fun to work with? Like, do they have a sense of humor? Are they like cool? Do they listen? I think that's a big one. It's like people that suck up a lot of airtime. I'm allergic to that. It's like, I've made some mishires on that. And so we call it like chill, humble, where it's just like, it's a cool group. People, everyone's obviously smart and accomplished, but like, you don't need to go advertise it. And like, there's a lot of space in meetings where it's just like good exchange of information in an efficient manner. So, you spend, however many hours a day at work, you want to friggin' enjoy it. And just being surrounded by smart, fun, cool people, I've learned is like great fuel to be able to go the long, difficult haul in a startup.
Totally. You've probably developed a lot of pattern recognition because you've been interviewing so many people as CEO, and you said how important it was to like one of your key focus areas. How often, if it's not a direct hire for you, obviously if you're hiring it, you're the decision maker, but if it's like one level down or 2 levels down, how often do you overrule? And how do you think about that? Right. Because you are the bar raiser for culture, but there's a balance to that, right? Because you also want to.
Yeah. I think the way to do that is to help, let's say it's a VP who's hiring someone underneath them, to help them frame how they're feeling about it. Right. So I can tell when we debrief, it's like sometimes the people are freaking just beaming and stoked, like, damn, I guess freaking that girl's awesome. Like, and sometimes like, yeah, like, good experience, like definitely lots of relevant experience. Probably, really good at this dimension. And you're just like, and you're trying to help them find, like, are you rationalizing your way into this? Which is, I think, the biggest mistake, and the mistake I've made most in my hiring is like when someone's got some big upside somewhere, but some holes somewhere else, and you're not like 110% stoked, and then you start rationalizing. It's like, all right, we need a person in the role, and like, God, they worked in a similar space, and like whatever the things are that you're trying to say to yourself to go cover up something, it's a really good signal that you're like, all right, nope, don't do that one. Like, you should get out of these interviews, and people should be like so stoked to be like, oh man, like this person's going to be epic. And so most of my overruling is just like challenging them then on their level of stoke. And if I don't see that, it's like, I try to ask questions to frame. It's like, are you really like amped on this and excited? If not, then the urgency that we feel to hire is not as significant as the need to get it right.
I love that. Yeah, I've seen those times when I can see something that one of my employees doesn't see, and I feel like it's still their hire, not mine, which is an interesting one. But I've had a couple where they may not fully admit it, and then they'll push through the hire, and then that kind of gets to the, okay, how do you deal with like the next 3 months? But those are the balances, right? Like, I've always erred on the side personally of, I'm going to tell you what I think, but it's your call, because if I take that out of your hands, then it sounds like you're in a similar.
Yeah, role, right? I'm going to get the outcome that I want. There's no question about that. But I'm going to do it. I'm a talented salesperson. I'm going to do it in a way where it seemed like their idea, right? So it's like,
you Miyagi them a little bit.
Yeah, you Miyagi them in the inception to like, it's the Socratic method to get them to the right outcome that you think is the right outcome.
That's good. I had a great experience one time where a hiring manager, I was like, listen, there will be a challenge. I can see this here. And he's like, oh, but I still want to, he called me from Hawaii. He's like, I still want to do it. And I'm like, okay. And, at the 30-day mark, I was like, how's it going? He's like, well. And so, but like, that was a learning experience for him. The organization learned, and we got somebody better. So.
Yeah. And like, if someone's really amped in the defense, like, great. Like, that's usually a good sign that they're amped for a reason. Like, and that's fine. But like, at least the challenging them, you challenge them, they back down, the sign it wasn't that strong. If you challenge them, which has happened before, and they really jump to defend, they're like, no, like this is this. Here's why I'm super excited. It's great. All right, cool. That's all I wanted to know. Right. But that's my job, is to test that level of excitement.
I like that. That's a good balance to it for sure. So, I mean, we talked about obviously you got Mark, who's a rock star marketer who I know too. And then your salesperson that didn't work out. Like, talk to me about like that first 30, 60 days. And you said they went to 6 months on that one. Like, how do you?
Yeah, maybe even 5.
Yeah, but how do you like set up them for success, and how do you like weed out the ones that aren't working?
That's a good question. And I think honestly, like 4.5 to 5 months is, I mean, other than like if they did something ridiculously inappropriate or something, like that's not bad. That's like probably the right window. It's not too long, but it's enough to like know. So that I don't regret that at all. I think that was the right window there. But yeah, how do we know? It's a combination of things. Obviously, I think the biggest thing for us was like, for me, like what we needed was a leader that was like very, like had a plan that was detailed and then executed that plan. Because like I am a good like vision person, but like I'm not particularly organized, and like I'm not a good project manager or anything like that. So like, I can lead an organization through vision. We don't need more of that necessarily. Obviously, it's good to have that, but like we needed a complementary skill set. And I think it was clear that like, after a while, that there just wasn't like a detailed plan. It'd be interesting that like the more important takeaway maybe is like, I had that feeling in the interview process where I was like, I don't think this is right. And then one of our advisors who's, very influentially, I was like super amped on this person. And my co-founder was like pretty amped, and we rationalized it. We had like a yellow flag on a reference too. Like looking back, I was like, wow, that was obvious. But like, the social dynamic of that decision making was such that everyone like rationalized to it. And so now that was a good learning experience. So it's like, all right, now I know how to recognize that rationalization when it happens.
I love how candid you are on that. It's so tough, but it's like those are better decisions. And it's neat to hear like that decision process. You touched on references, right? Like, when do you do them in the process? I've always struggled with that, right? Like, do I pick up the phone and do them like right when they come in the funnel, or do I do them at the end? Or
it depends what you have. I mean, like, in sales, we tend to be like obviously incredibly highly networked with that person. So it's like, we're going to have access to a lot of back channel references, like, ahead of time, where they may have come through a referral in the first place. Right. Formal references are good too. I think there's like, we even get this in our current business and user evidence. The question is like, aren't references like polished and kind of curated? And like, of course they're going to say good stuff. Yes. But if you're a good interviewer, like, you can do a really good job of differentiating to like, yeah, he was great. Like, I would definitely hire him again, versus like, that dude, yeah, top 1% of people I've worked in my career. Like, I would move mountains to work with that lady again. Like that. Yeah. So that is your job as an interviewer. Like, if you just like, tell me about your experience with them, how long did you work together? Would you hire him? Like, if you just like do like some of the big companies, they literally just have like a checklist of stuff, and you're not going to learn anything from that. Right. But in a startup, if you're good at reference calls, you learn a lot from those provided references. So yeah, they can be incredibly valuable. Obviously, if you can get back channel references, sometimes it can be delicate. If the person's still at a company or whatever, don't ping their CEO and be like, this person's thinking of leaving. What do you think? Because that's not cool. But if, there's other people in your network that know that person and it's not going to impact their career trajectory or job trajectory or whatever, then yeah, take advantage of those for sure.
I personally do every one of the formal ones and then the back channel ones as well too. But it's like, I find you end up making friends with the people you're doing those references on. It's like, it's not only you learn about somebody, but you get a networking thing. And for me, the best ones are when they're like, yeah, I've worked with this person twice and I wish I could have hired him for this role. Or
a lot of people say like, I am going to hire that person if you don't in like the next 3 to 6 months. I'm like, all right, good to know.
I have that all the time. Like I will, I'm trying to hire this person too, but like I'll recommend them. Maybe not on the how I hire for a second, but I'm just fascinated. It's like when you talked about how people use user evidence and the BS kind of like lightweight logos. I was thinking of like the 11X saga, right? Where they were just like random logos on there. You guys are like the opposite of that, but it's like, I'd be curious. I know it's not the hiring, but I'm fascinated by it. Is how do you convey that depth to it in the because you're taking a logo, you're turning it into a customer testimonial. It's like user evidence for the right points in time. But like, what have you learned about that process of like what are effective testimonials and case studies and what are not?
Yeah, it's the same thing. Honestly, it's like, I mean, both are high consideration purchases essentially, right? One, you're spending $100,000 on technology. Other one, you're spending $100,000 on a person, right? Same thing. So you want to know that this thing is going to work, right? And for that, it's depth and specificity. Specificity in a buying a product sense. Does it work for someone in my industry, in my size, in my tech environment, whatever? Kind of same thing in the job too. Is like, does this person work in my environment, in my culture, at my size, at my stage, in the type of company I have in a very outbound enterprise in our case? So there's that. And then there's the depth and specificity relative to like the quality of the reference, right? There's testimonials on G2 where it's like, all right, yeah, we love Asana or whatever. It's like, all right, cool. Or like, we'll have a next logo. It's like, great. And then there's like these other ones that are like, all right, here's, 3 paragraphs on some things we like, things we didn't like, that obviously conveys a lot more like depth and honesty. And that obviously it's going to be a lot more credible, right? So the quality of the reference, like another one's like who it is too. A guy we recently hired was still employed by this company and gave me the CEO and his VP. Impressive, right? It's like, cool. That means like he's still working there. He's about to leave, but he's got enough respect from that org where he can actually provide a reference from the current company that he's at. Like, that's cool, right? That speaks volumes. Have to have direct managers from the past, right? I think is a really good indicator. A lot of people try to hide that. It's like, all right, here's a peer from my last company. And with that, the subtext on that is like, my manager wouldn't necessarily say good things. Yeah, so, again, like, if they're still at their current company, that might be delicate, but they should at least be able to provide managers from their previous companies or CEOs from their previous companies or whatever.
I am with you, although I had one that didn't, and I dug in with some of the back channel references, and they were like, yeah, their manager was a total shit show. And I'm like, okay.
Like, some way to triangulate that, right? Yeah. Plus they're 21 years old, in which case, whoever, right? Their parents' friend is probably sufficient. But yeah.
That's awesome. Well, those are kind of the questions I had. I mean, I'm curious, is there any kind of like overall lessons from hiring that I didn't ask about that I should have asked about? Any wisdom where you've kind of like learned as throughout the arc of your career?
I think the biggest thing is like the period of time that you have this person is probably going to be longer than the period of time that, you have a gap in a role that you need to fill. So like, I think like, I remember back to like, it was just funny. It was before we even started the company. It was like we were raising some money and stuff. We were looking for our first engineer, and it seemed so urgent, right? Because like I couldn't start our company until we had an engineer because Ray and I can't code. It's pre-AI. And like we looked at this one candidate and he was like, it's pretty good. Like he was solid, but he wasn't quite right. And like I probably wanted to hire him just because I wanted to get started. And luckily, like one of my mentors, like, not the right dude. And then 3 weeks later, we talked to the guy. It was so obvious. This feels amazing. Like this is definitely the guy. But like, I think just the patience, even when you have like you really want to get a butt in the seat, just the patience to get it right, and like just keeping that bar insanely high. Like you have to come out of these things just like where you're just stoked and energized. You're like, dang, this is gonna be so fun. Like that's the feeling that you need to have, especially in your first like 20 hires, because that old adage, right? A players hire other A players and B players hire C players is true, right? So like whatever it is going to cascade down several hires later. And so getting that initial group right is just like massively critical, and you just can't compromise on it. And again, it is the fuel that then is going to fuel your future recruiting and the energy that you have in the company. So yeah, just don't compromise would be my advice.
I love that. I would add one corollary to it too, which is there's an extra week or two that you can give candidates, right? So I always give the speech, which is take as long as you need to wrap up your current employer right. Because I hope you're with us for a long time, but like if you ever leave us, like do it right on the back end.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like, I think I always give every manager's like, I need them in. And I'm like, it's okay to take an extra week or two.
I love that. And I think also, especially if someone's been at the company for 3 or 4 years, which is ideally what you want to see, like take 2 weeks to go freaking travel or just chill or do whatever you do to like decompress. Like doing a 4-year stint and doing like what we hope is going to be another 4-year plus stint here, like back to back is rough. Like you didn't get any break there. So I try to encourage you to like take at least 2 weeks after they quit their last job to just chill and like reset and relax. I think the other thing that's a fun, good hiring thing is like timelines are also just made up, right? Either from the company or the candidate, especially from the company, right? It's like, I hate to like, your offer expires in 2 days, so we don't want you to look at other companies. It's like, dude, this isn't like, look at all your options. We're not obviously standing out as like the best option, then that's your answer. Like, don't join us, right? So it's like, if anything, like make it more difficult for that person to join because like you want them to get over some bars to like really prove that they're, the right fit for both you and them.
I love that, man. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. This is great. I'd say anybody that is looking for a great career with a great company, great leadership, look at Evan. And if you're looking...
SDRs, we're hiring SDRs. I think that's it right now. But yeah, SDR.
That's awesome. And then I truly do think the way they're doing user evidence and testimonials is so powerful. So check it out. Thank you, Evan.
Good to hang out, Andy. Appreciate it.